The massive chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Admiral Blake walked to the center platform. His gray uniform stood out against the purple-tinted metal walls, and his footsteps echoed through the room. Around him, representatives from 1,000 worlds watched from their floating seats, arranged in perfect circles that reached up toward the crystal dome above. "Honorable Council," Blake began, his voice steady but concerned. "I come before you with disturbing news about a newly discovered species in the outer rim of Section 7. He waved his hand, and a hologram of Earth appeared above him, spinning slowly. Several council members leaned forward, their various alien features showing mild interest. Most of them had seen this routine countless times before. A new species discovered, a new world to bring under their control, nothing special. "This species calls themselves humans," Blake continued. "At first glance, they appear primitive. They'd barely reached their moon, their technology is unrefined, and they still fight among themselves." He paused, letting the council members nod in agreement. This was exactly what they expected to hear. But then Blake's expression darkened. "However, my research team has discovered something unprecedented. These humans," he pressed a button, and the hologram changed to show Earth's various environments. "They evolved on what we would classify as a death world." Murmurs spread through the chamber. One of the council members, an elegant being with crystal-like skin, spoke up. "Explain this term, Admiral." "Their planet has extreme variations in temperature, from burning deserts to freezing poles. Their gravity is 1.3 times our standard. They have thousands of predator species, natural disasters, and deadly weather patterns." Blake showed images of hurricanes, volcanoes, and various predators. "Most remarkably, humans have not just survived these conditions, they've thrived." The council chamber grew louder with discussion. Another member, tall and thin with blue skin, raised his hand. "Admiral, surely this is not a concern. Our technology is far superior. We have conquered 10,000 species in our history." Blake shook his head. "With respect, council member, those species were different. Look at this." The hologram showed humans in various activities, fighting fires, diving in deep oceans, climbing mountains. These humans routinely put themselves in deadly situations for what they call sport. They intentionally challenge themselves against their world's harshest conditions. He switched to another image showing human military exercises. Their warriors train in every environment: desert, jungle, Arctic, underwater. They've developed weapons specifically designed for each condition. But most worrying, he pressed another button, and the hologram showed various human entertainment media. They constantly imagine and prepare for wars against superior forces. They create stories, games, and simulations about fighting powerful aliens. They've been preparing to fight us before they even knew we existed. The chamber erupted in laughter. The head council member, his golden robes shimmering, spoke through his chuckles. "Admiral Blake, surely you're not suggesting this primitive species could resist our mighty empire. Your concern for these humans is admirable but unnecessary." Blake's face remained serious. "I recommend we skip the standard conquest protocols. These humans, they're different. They have a saying that worried my research team. Whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger. They actively seek out challenges that should destroy them, then adapt and overcome. If we attack and fail to overwhelm them immediately." "Enough." The head council member stood. "Admiral, your report is noted, but we will proceed as planned. Send the standard invasion fleet. These humans will submit like all others before them." Blake bowed his head, but his voice carried a warning. "As you command, but I request it be noted in the official record. I advised against this action. These humans, they don't think like other species. They don't fear what they should fear. And most dangerously," he looked up at the council, his eyes grave, "they never learned when to give up." As Blake left the chamber, the council members returned to their usual discussions, already dismissing his warnings. None of them noticed that the human hologram was still playing, showing scenes of their military training, their extreme sports, their survival skills. None of them understood that they were about to face something they had never encountered before, a species that had turned survival itself into an art form. In his private chamber later, Blake looked at Earth one more time on his personal display. "May the stars help us all," he whispered. "We're not ready for humans." The Imperial invasion fleet hung in space like a swarm of metal insects, their ships reflecting the distant light of Earth's sun. Fleet Commander Roberts stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Dawn, watching the blue planet grow larger on his view screen. His long experience told him this would be another easy victory for the Empire. "Send the standard surrender message," Roberts ordered, smoothing his black uniform. "Let's get this over with quickly." The message broadcast in all Earth languages. "Primitive species, you are now part of the Galactic Empire. Surrender your weapons and accept our rule or face immediate destruction. You have 1 hour to respond." Roberts smiled, expecting the usual panic and quick surrender he had seen 100 times before. Instead, his communication officer turned to him with a confused look. "Sir, we're receiving a response, but it's strange." "Play it," Roberts commanded. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and to everyone's surprise, they heard laughter. Clear, human laughter, followed by a calm voice. "We've been waiting for you." Roberts frowned. This wasn't the normal response. What do they mean, waiting for us? Scan their planet. The sensor officer's hands flew over his controls, then stopped suddenly. "Sir, they have defensive systems activated. Advanced ones. They're tracking all our ships." "Impossible." Roberts strode to the sensor display. "They're a primitive species. They barely have space travel." Another officer spoke up, his voice shaking. "Commander, we're detecting energy signatures from their moon and Mars. They have bases there, hidden bases." The human voice came again. "Your stealth technology is good, but we detected your scout ships 3 weeks ago. Did you really think we wouldn't prepare?" Roberts felt the first hint of fear crawl up his spine. Launch fighters. Begin the attack pattern. The Imperial fighters streamed from their carrier ships, thousands of them filling space. But as they approached Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. "Sir," the sensor officer shouted, "they're using some kind of electromagnetic pulse weapons. Our fighters, they're dropping like stones." Roberts watched in horror as waves of human defenders rose from the planet. Their ships were ugly, practical things, nothing like the sleek Imperial vessels. But they moved with deadly purpose, and their weapons, simple projectile weapons that the Empire had dismissed as primitive, tore through the Imperial energy shields as if they weren't there. "How is this possible?" Roberts demanded. "Our shields stop energy weapons." "That's the problem, sir," his science officer explained, face pale. "They're not using energy weapons. They're using physical projectiles, chunks of metal moving at incredible speeds. Our shields weren't designed to stop physical objects." The humans had more surprises. When Imperial ships tried to enter the atmosphere, Earth's defenders used the planet's own magnetic field as a weapon, disrupting their systems. They had placed weapons platforms in orbit, disguised as space junk. Even their primitive satellites had been turned into weapons. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from their leader," the communication officer reported. The main screen lit up, showing a human military commander sitting calmly in what looked like an underground bunker. "This is General Mitchell of Earth's Combined Defense Force. I'll make this simple. Leave now, or we'll show you what we've learned from studying your scout ships." Roberts felt cold. You captured our scouts." The human smiled. "Why do you think we let them get so close? We needed to understand your technology. Your ships are impressive, but they have weaknesses. Would you like us to demonstrate what we found?" As if to answer his question, a group of human ships appeared from behind Earth's moon, using technology that looked suspiciously like Imperial cloaking devices, but modified, improved. Roberts stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. His fleet, which had conquered countless worlds, was being torn apart by a species that supposedly couldn't even reach their own system's outer planets. "Full retreat," Roberts ordered, his voice cracking. "Get us out of here." As the Imperial ships fled, leaving their damaged fighters behind, the human commander sent one final message. Next time, bring your whole fleet. We'll be ready for that too." In his private quarters later, Roberts wrote his report to the Galactic Council. His hands shook as he typed. Admiral Blake was right. We weren't ready for humans. And now they're ready for us. The Galactic Empire's war room buzzed with nervous energy. High Command had gathered to watch live feeds from the Earth invasion, and none of them could believe what they were seeing. Impossible. Grand Admiral Peters slammed his fist on the holographic table. How are they still fighting? This is day 5. No species has ever lasted more than 2 days against a full attack. The massive screen showed scenes from round Earth. Imperial forces had landed in what they thought were perfect spots: empty deserts, frozen wastelands, dense forests, places where their superior technology should have given them total control. Instead, these areas had become death traps for Imperial troops. "Sir," another report from the Australian front, a young officer announced, "our forces are retreating. The humans, they're using the local wildlife against us. Something called cassowaries broke through our defensive lines." Peters watched the footage in disbelief. Humans had somehow trained the local creatures to attack Imperial positions. In other areas, they were using the environment itself as a weapon. In deserts, they appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished into sandstorms. In the Arctic, they moved like ghosts across the ice, their white clothing making them nearly invisible. "Show me the urban combat footage," Peters ordered. The screen changed to show battles in cities. Here, the Empire's struggles were even worse. Humans turned every building into a fortress, every street into an ambush point. They fought room by room, floor by floor, with a determination that shocked the Imperial forces. "Sir," another officer rushed in, "we've lost contact with Base 7. The humans, they did something new." The footage showed what happened. The humans had filled old vehicles with explosives and sent them racing toward Imperial energy shields. The shields, designed to stop energy weapons, couldn't react fast enough to physical objects moving at high speed. After the explosions created gaps, human fighters rushed in with simple but effective weapons: projectile guns, handheld rockets, and even primitive but deadly blade weapons. "Look at this," the tactical officer pointed to another screen. "They're learning to jam our communications using our own captured technology. They're not just copying it, they're improving it." Peters watched as human engineers worked on captured Imperial equipment. In just days, they had learned enough about Imperial technology to start turning it against its makers. They didn't just use it. They modified it, combined it with their own technology in ways the Empire had never considered. "Sir, you need to see this," a science officer called out. "We've analyzed their combat patterns. Each human unit fights differently. There's no standard approach. They adapt their tactics for each situation." "How is that possible?" Peters asked. "How can they coordinate without standard protocols?" "That's just it, sir. They don't need rigid protocols. Their warriors are trained to think independently, to adapt on the spot. Look here." The screen showed a human unit trapped by Imperial forces. Instead of surrendering or fighting to the death as expected, they somehow turned an office building's water sprinkler system into a weapon, shorting out Imperial energy weapons. They escaped through underground tunnels that weren't on any map. "And it's not just their soldiers," the officer continued. "Civilians are helping them. Look, they're making weapons in their homes using something called 3D printers. They're turning their factories from making everyday items to producing military equipment in hours. Their entire society is mobilizing for war." Peters sat heavily in his chair, watching more reports flood in. In Africa, humans were using the terrain to ambush Imperial patrols. In South America, they had somehow tamed the dense jungle to hide massive underground bases. In Asia, they turned crowded cities into mazes that Imperial forces couldn't navigate. "Send word to the Council," Peters finally said, his voice tired. "The humans, they're not just fighting back. They're getting stronger. Every defeat teaches them. Every victory makes them more dangerous. We're not fighting a primitive species. We're fighting an entire planet of warriors who treat survival itself as an art form." As if to emphasize his point, another alert sounded. On the main screen, a group of humans had captured an Imperial heavy tank. Within hours, they had not only learned to use it, but had modified it to be more effective than its original design. And worst of all, Peters added, watching the humans celebrate their latest victory. They're enjoying this. They're treating this invasion like a challenge to overcome, not a disaster to survive. We didn't find a primitive species to conquer. We woke up a sleeping giant. Deep within the Empire's main intelligence center, lead analyst Miller stared at his screens in growing horror. As head of the Human Study Unit, he had spent days analyzing captured human data, and what he found terrified him. Play the historical records again, he ordered his team. The large wall screen lit up with scenes from Earth's past. Sir, are you sure you want to watch these again? His assistant asked. They're disturbing. The Council needs to understand what we're facing, Miller replied. Look at this. Humans have been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. The screen showed battles from different time periods, ancient armies clashing with swords, medieval sieges, modern warfare with tanks and planes, and recent conflicts with advanced weapons. Each era showed humans becoming more efficient at warfare. Stop here, Miller pointed. Look at their entertainment. The screen changed to show human movies, video games, and books. Stories about war, about fighting against impossible odds, about never giving up. Even their children played with toy soldiers and learned strategy games. Their games, Miller shook his head in disbelief. They turned everything into training. Look at this thing called chess. It's basically a war simulation. And these video games, they're combat training disguised as entertainment. A messenger rushed into the room. Sir, we just finished interviewing the captured human commander. Miller turned quickly. What did Commander White say? The messenger handed over a data pad. Well, you should read it yourself, sir. Miller read the interview transcript aloud. Interrogator, why do you humans keep fighting? You must know you can't win. Commander White, can't win. Asterisk lost, asterisk, you've never lost a war because you've never fought someone who refused to lose. Interrogator, but we've conquered thousands of species. Commander White, yeah, species that gave up. That's your problem. You don't understand humans. We've spent our entire history fighting ourselves. We know every trick, every strategy, because we've used them all against each other. Miller continued reading, his face growing paler. The human commander had explained how Earth's divided nature had actually made them stronger. While the Empire's species evolved to work together, humans had evolved to compete. They had thousands of different cultures, each with their own way of fighting. Sir, another analyst called out. You need to see these human training documents we found. The screens filled with military manuals, survival guides, and battle tactics. The Empire's forces were trained to follow strict protocols, but humans were trained to think independently, to adapt, to improvise. Look at this, Miller pointed to a section. They have something called war games where they practice fighting against superior forces. They've been preparing for an alien invasion their entire lives, through their movies, their books, their games. They even have detailed plans for fighting with primitive weapons if they lose their technology. The room fell silent as Miller pulled up more files. Human children's stories about beating giants, myths about small heroes defeating powerful monsters, movies about humanity surviving against all odds. And this, Miller's voice shook as he showed another document. They have something called guerrilla warfare. It's not about winning big battles. It's about wearing down a stronger enemy over time. They're patient. They're willing to lose battles to win the war. A senior officer who had been quietly watching spoke up. How do their soldiers keep fighting when victory seems impossible? Miller played a video clip of a human military graduation ceremony. Listen to their oath, he said. The room heard the human soldiers. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. That's not just words to them, Miller explained. It's their core belief. Every human soldier lives by this code. They would rather die than surrender. And look at this. He showed footage of civilian resistance, Regular humans, not soldiers, fighting against Imperial forces with whatever weapons they could find or make. "We thought we were invading a planet of primitives," Miller said quietly. "Instead, we invaded a planet where every single human sees themselves as a potential soldier. They've turned their entire history of warfare into a strength. Every battle we win teaches them. Every soldier we defeat makes the others fight harder." He turned to face his team, his expression grim. "We're not just fighting their armies. We're fighting their entire culture. A culture that has spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war." The Imperial flagship Star Crusher moved into position above Earth. On its bridge, Supreme Commander Taylor smiled coldly. The humans had proved troublesome, but now he would end this war with the Empire's ultimate weapon. "Begin charging the planet killer," Taylor ordered. "Let's show these humans true power." The massive weapon took up half the ship's length. It had destroyed 17 planets before, turning them into asteroid fields. No species had ever survived its blast. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "planet killer at full charge." Taylor straightened his uniform. "Send the final warning to Earth. Let them spend their last moments in fear." The message went out: "Humans, witness your doom. Your resistance ends today." The response came quickly, but it wasn't what Taylor expected. Instead of panic or pleading, a young human voice replied, "Thanks for the light show. It helped us finish our calculations." "What?" Taylor stepped forward. "What calculations?" Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir," the sensor officer shouted, "multiple objects launching from Earth's moon." Taylor watched in confusion as hundreds of small ships rose from hidden bases on the moon. They looked cobbled together, made from a mix of human and Imperial technology. "Impossible," Taylor whispered. Those are our shield designs." The human ships had somehow copied Imperial shield technology, but they looked different, modified, improved. The humans had taken the Empire's greatest defense system and changed it in ways the Empire's engineers had never imagined. "Sir, they're broadcasting again," the communication officer reported. This time, an older human appeared on screen. "Commander Taylor, I'm Dr. Reed from Earth's Advanced Research Division. We've been studying your shield technology since we captured your first scout ships. Fascinating design, but a bit limited. We made some improvements." Taylor's face reddened with rage. "Fire the planet killer. Now." The massive weapon unleashed its energy, a beam of pure destruction that had never failed to destroy a planet. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. But when the light faded, Earth still stood, and those human ships, they hadn't just survived. They had absorbed the energy. "Interesting weapon." Dr. Reed's voice came again. "Very inefficient, though. Wastes most of its power as light and heat. We thought you might try it, so we adjusted our shields to absorb energy weapons. Would you like to see what we do with all that extra power?" Before Taylor could respond, the human ships fired back. They had turned his planet killer's energy against him, using it to power weapons of their own design. The Imperial flagship's shields, designed to handle normal energy weapons, were overwhelmed by this new type of attack. "How?" Taylor demanded as his ship's systems began to fail. "How did you learn our technology so quickly?" The human doctor actually laughed. "Commander, we've spent our entire history taking other people's inventions and making them better. It's what humans do. We adapt, we improve, we overcome. Your mistake was giving us time to study your technology." More alarms sounded as other human ships appeared, rising from bases on Mars and hidden stations in the asteroid belt. Each one carried weapons that shouldn't have existed, combinations of human ingenuity and Imperial technology. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking, "they're not just using our technology. They've improved it. Their shields are stronger, their weapons more efficient. They've done in weeks what took us centuries." Taylor watched helplessly as his mighty fleet was torn apart by their own technology, turned against them by human hands. Ships that had served the Empire for decades fell to weapons that were barely a month old. "Full retreat," Taylor ordered, but it was too late. The humans had positioned ships behind them, using the Empire's own cloaking technology to hide until the perfect moment. As his flagship's systems failed one by one, Taylor received a final message from Earth. It showed humans in laboratories and workshops, surrounded by dismantled Imperial technology. Engineers and scientists working day and night to understand and improve every piece of Imperial equipment they could capture. Next time, Dr. Reed said calmly, bring better technology. We enjoy the challenge of improving it. Taylor's last thought, before his ship's power failed completely, was a terrible realization. They hadn't just created a new enemy. They had given humans the tools to become something even the Empire feared. A species that could take any technology and make it their own. The largest fleet in Imperial history filled the space around Mars. 10,000 warships gathered from every corner of the Empire, prepared for what they believed would be the final battle. On the command ship, Grand Marshal Thomas watched Earth, a small blue dot in the distance. All ships report ready, his aide announced. The entire Imperial fleet awaits your command. Thomas nodded slowly. Send the message. Let Earth know what's coming. The message was simple. Surrender or face total destruction. You cannot resist the full might of the Empire. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Earth responded with just 2 words. Try us. Begin the attack, Thomas ordered. All ships, advance. The Imperial fleet moved forward like a metal wave, but as they passed Mars, something unexpected happened. The red planet's surface split open, revealing massive hidden bases. Human ships poured out by the thousands. How? Thomas stumbled back. How do they have bases on Mars? His intelligence officer rushed forward with reports. Sir, we're detecting more bases on Venus, on Europa, throughout the asteroid belt. The humans, they've been building colonies across their solar system for years, before we even found them. Thomas watched in growing horror as human forces emerged from everywhere. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, preparing for war before they even knew aliens existed. Each base had different weapons, different tactics, all designed to counter Imperial technology. Sir, a sensor operator shouted, they're using our own jump drive technology. They're appearing behind our lines. Human ships blinked in and out of existence, using improved versions of Imperial technology to strike from impossible angles. Their weapons had evolved even further. Now they combined physical projectiles with energy weapons in ways the Empire had never imagined. Launch all fighters, Thomas commanded. Push through their lines. But the humans had planned for this too. Small, fast human ships darted between the larger Imperial vessels. They carried strange devices that turned the Empire's own shield frequencies against them, creating gaps that human weapons could penetrate. New contact. Another officer called out. Something big coming from behind Earth's moon. The massive shape that emerged made Thomas's heart stop. It was a human warship, but larger than anything they had built before. Its hull was covered with weapons, some Imperial, some human, some that combined both technologies in new ways. This is Admiral Thompson of the Human Defense Force, a calm voice announced across all channels. We call this ship Humanity's Response. We built it using everything we learned from your attacks. Would you like to see how it works? The human supership opened fire. Its weapons were devastating. They had taken every weakness they had discovered in Imperial defenses and created systems specifically designed to exploit them. Entire squadrons of Imperial ships fell in seconds. Status report, Thomas demanded. Sir, we've lost 30% of the fleet already. Their weapons. They're not just copying our technology anymore. They're combining it with ideas we never thought of. Each of their bases has different tactics, different technologies. We can't adapt fast enough. Thomas watched as his mighty fleet was torn apart. Human ships worked together in ways that made no sense to Imperial tacticians, small ships deliberately drawing fire to create openings for larger ones, crews sacrificing themselves to protect others, battle plans that seemed chaotic but were actually carefully coordinated. Remember, Admiral Thompson's voice came again. You chose this fight. We were happy exploring our own solar system, building our colonies, preparing for whatever we might find out there. You thought our preparations meant we were primitive. Now you know, we weren't preparing because we were primitive. We were preparing because we were smart. The human supership advanced, its weapons cutting through the Imperial fleet like paper. Behind it, thousands of smaller ships pressed the attack, each one using different tactics, different technologies, making it impossible for the Empire to form an effective defense. Full retreat, Thomas finally ordered, his voice breaking. Get us out of this system. As the surviving Imperial ships fled, Admiral Thompson sent one final message. Consider this a lesson, Empire. You thought finding us at a primitive stage meant we would be easy to conquer. Instead, you gave us the one thing humans do best with, a challenge to overcome. Next time, we won't be so merciful. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. No one moved, no one spoke. They all stared at the message floating in the center of the room. We're coming to talk. You won't like our terms. Human Defense Force. Head Counselor James, the same one who had dismissed Admiral Blake's warnings months ago, looked older than ever. How many ships did we lose? He asked quietly. 7,342 warships destroyed, an aide reported. Another 2,000 damaged beyond repair. Over 1 million Imperial troops either dead or captured. It's the worst defeat in Imperial history. The massive doors of the chamber opened. Admiral Blake walked in, his face grim. They're here. The council members watched as a group of humans entered. They didn't wear fancy uniforms or decorative armor like Imperial officials. Their clothes were simple, practical, built for function rather than show. Admiral Thompson led them, carrying a data pad. Let's make this simple, Thompson said, his voice echoing in the quiet chamber. We're not interested in revenge. We're not even interested in conquering you. We just want to make sure you never try to invade another species again. He activated his data pad, and holograms appeared around the chamber. They showed human ships patrolling space, using modified Imperial technology to protect weaker species. From now on, Thompson continued, Earth will be the protector of developing worlds. Any species you haven't conquered yet is under our protection. Try to invade them, and you'll find out just how much more we've learned about your technology. You can't do this. One council member stood up. We've ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Thompson smiled. And in just 3 months, we proved those 10,000 years made you weak. You forgot how to adapt, how to improve. You just copied the same tactics, the same technology over and over. He pressed another button, showing images of human scientists working with captured Imperial technology. We've already improved every piece of your equipment we captured. Your ships, your weapons, your shields. We made them all better. Want to guess what we'll create in a year? 5 years? 10. The council chamber erupted in angry shouts, but head counselor James raised his hand for silence. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Thompson nodded and began listing them. First, you acknowledge Earth and its colonies as an independent power. Second, you leave developing species alone. Their fate is their own to decide. Third, you share your technology with us. We'll share our improvements in return. And if we refuse, another council member asked. In response, Thompson showed one final hologram. It displayed the human supership they had built, alongside plans for even larger vessels. Then we'll take what we want anyway. You've seen what we can do with just a few months of preparation. Imagine what we'll do with years. The council members looked at each other, then at their head counselor. James stood slowly. We accept your terms, he said. We have no choice. You always had a choice, Thompson corrected him. You chose to attack a species you didn't understand. You chose to ignore Admiral Blake's warnings. You chose to underestimate humans. Those choices led you here. As the human delegation left, Admiral Blake stayed behind. He looked at his fellow council members and spoke softly. I'm adding a new protocol to our first contact procedures. When you find humans, don't fight them. If they find you first, be honest with them. Either way, remember this. They don't think like other species. They've turned survival into an art form, war into a science, and adaptation into a way of life. He walked to the door, then turned one last time. We thought their primitive technology made them weak. Instead, it made them stronger. They had to fight for everything they achieved, had to earn every advance. And now, he gestured at the images of human ships still floating in the chamber. Now they have our technology too. The galaxy will never be the same. Outside the council chamber, Earth's ships patrolled the stars. They carried a simple message to all developing worlds. Grow at your own pace. Choose your own path. The humans are watching, and we remember what it's like to be the underdog. And across the galaxy, a new saying spread among imperial worlds. If you find humans, run. If they find you first, pray they're feeling merciful. Either way, never make them angry. They don't know how to lose. They only know how to get stronger.